Hi everyone, Leinster House is a complete and utter laughing stock, and the Punch and Judy show continues with today's confidence vote in Simon Harris. Now, the government decided to clear the Dáil schedule today and not speak about a multitude of crises facing the country, but brought forward a motion of confidence in Simon Harris. Now, this was following the announcement by Aintu that they were going to pull forward a motion of no confidence next week. Of course, that's the week of the presidential election. They already said that back in August at a demonstration that was attended by a number of thousands of people in Dublin to support the families of all the children who were suffering on hospital waiting lists awaiting spinal surgery, and in particular young Harvey Morrison, little 9-year-old boy who died on the 29th of July of this year. And this demonstration was led by his parents, Gillian and Stephen, and also, as I said, many members of those families who have been left behind and have suffered and died needlessly because of government policies. And remember, Simon Harris said back in 2017 the children will be waiting no longer than 4 months for spinal surgeries. And yet today we have a stagnating hospital waiting list for those children who are suffering in unimaginable pain. But this was a complete and utter cynical stroke by the government to bring forward a motion of confidence by clearing the schedule. They already hadn't seen the text for the no confidence motion, which was due to go forward next week. So they brought forward their own confidence motion in Simon Harris. And of course, Simon Harris has had his multitude of failings across many departments he's in. We can see him now in the Department of Trade and Foreign Affairs, how much of a hames he's made of this department. But at the same time, we've seen also Simon Harris blocking everybody who speaks against him on his social media platforms. And also in terms of the children waiting on spinal surgeries, as I said, the disaster of Children's Health Ireland, the unnecessary hip surgeries for children, and not to mention the National Hospital Children's Hospital scandal, which of course Simon Harris signed off on and said it was going to be costing the taxpayer €650 million. Here we are, years later, cost overruns at least 3 to 4 times that amount at the moment, 2 billion plus, thanks to Simon Harris. And of course, at the back of this is really the lack of accountability in terms of responsibility, and that's really what's fundamental in terms of the lack of trust in Irish political life, because there is no accountability. It's always about lessons learned, let's move on, let's do better. And Harris said the same thing today. He said in his speech that he's taken accountability. Well, he hasn't, because he's rising upwards. You fail upwards in society, but he's not failing upwards. He's serving the interests that he was appointed essentially into that position to serve. Of course, he is a young global leader of the World Economic Forum as well. Maybe nobody would ask him about that, a technocratic institution that serves the corrupt billionaires in the global society. But that's not mentioned whatsoever when it comes to Simon Harris. And of course, he also said that we are not where we need to be in addressing deficits in children's care in the context of spinal surgeries. We are not where we need to be. We have to work harder. Isn't that Simon Harris's mantra? He said we will be doing more, and it's all in good faith. Of course, this was echoed by many members of the Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil and its independent lapdogs from the Lowry-led independents, who gave testimonies and eulogies for Simon Harris to say, these are failings, but we must do better, and it's not acceptable. We must all do better and put the shoulder to the wheel. Accountability-free zone. You see what's happening here. And he also said that we must be restless to do more. He must be restless to do more. Simon Harris. At the same time, there's 234 children waiting today on spinal surgeries. Of course, the list has stagnated. Children aren't being sent abroad, according to Harris, as he's claiming all the time, for spinal surgeries. And also, as he said, there is zero accountability in Irish political life. Seems like Leinster House is particularly appalling in terms of accountability. And of course, when there's no responsibility, trust and respect in the so-called democracy in Ireland dies. And this is what the political system has really come down to in Irish society, where people just move on and forget about it. The media cycle will move on. But at the back of all this, there are children today who are suffering, young children suffering unnecessarily on hospital waiting lists, suffering in pain. And that is fundamentally what this is all about. In a society that's exceptionally wealthy, where the top 10% in our society have 50% of the wealth, and there's so much money is getting funneled upwards. And at the same time, Harris spoke yesterday about Gaza to say we will do as much as we can. He does the same for Ukraine. We'll do whatever it takes for Ukraine. All this nonsense. But when it comes to looking after the needs of our children here in Ireland, it's forgotten about, and especially those who are left behind, suffering unimaginable pain, a litany of injuries and infections they would pick up as well, waiting in pain for years and years. That has been completely and utterly disregarded by this typical, cynical, underhanded political stroke coming from Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and their Lowry-led lackey independents. They just don't care about the interests of ordinary people wherever you live. So this should be a test and a wake-up call to those who are wavering about what's taking place in society and not really certain. The state isn't benevolent. They're not no interest in serving the interests of ordinary people, of course, across the people of Ireland. And the people, we proclaim our sovereignty, but we've lost our sovereignty because of these politicians at the top of society who have no interest and are just interested in their own self-serving agenda rather than being interested in the public good and looking after the interests of some of those who are struggling. Today still we have hunger strikers from the reform schools and industrial schools still on hunger strike, well over 22 days at this stage on hunger strike outside the gates of Dáil Éireann. Just shows you the lunacy, looking for absolutely next to nothing. But then the virtue signallers and the great grandstanders are fantastic on the global stage, aren't they, when they propel these statements and throw our public money away at will while people and children suffer. And the back of it all is those children who have passed away, such as Harvey Morrison, rest in peace, and many more who are suffering needlessly and unnecessarily because of this. Please share my videos, please subscribe, and keep getting the message out to what's going on, because there's no confidence in this lame duck Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, neither with his so-called T-boy, Simon Harris, as well. So thanks so much for support, and slán go fóill. Take care.